I've been kind of ringing the alarm. Like it's kind of time to panic. There's a lot of stuff to do, and also there's an entire free agency to deal with. There's like 100 players that are free agents. Have you heard anything? Have you heard of teams starting to talk to players? I know that they technically...
The panic is real, and it's spreading fast. When a credentialed WNBA reporter sits down for an interview and casually throws around the phrase, delayed season, like it's just another item on the calendar, you know something has gone catastrophically wrong behind the scenes. This isn't your typical labor dispute playing out in boardrooms while fans scroll through their phones unaware. This is a full-blown crisis that could shatter the entire foundation of the 2025 WNBA season before it even...
It's becoming clear that the season could be delayed. I reported this, I think, last month, that there was a belief among a number of league sources that thought if this doesn't get done by early February, the season will be delayed. Because to your point, Stewie has said this.
It's off. And the scariest part? The clock isn't just ticking anymore. It's screaming. Every single day that passes without a resolution brings the league closer to a scenario that seemed unthinkable just months ago. A delayed start, disrupted careers, and 100 players stuck in limbo with no idea where they'll play or how much they'll earn. Teams are starting to panic. General managers are losing sleep. And if you think this is just background noise...
In the same way it is in the NBA, there hasn't been a ton of movement. There's a lot of reasons for that. We don't have to get into that today. But when Candace signed with the Sky, that was one of the biggest free agency moves at the time in the history of the WNBA, and that was just 2021. And so what we've seen in the year...
It'll work itself out. You're not paying attention to what's actually happening right now. Here's the reality that nobody wants to say out loud. Early February has become the deadline that league sources have been circling on their calendars for weeks now, and not in a good way. If the collective bargaining agreement negotiations aren't completely wrapped up by then, the entire season gets pushed back. Not delayed by a week or two. We're talking about a fundamental reshaping of the entire 2025 calendar. And to understand why that deadline...
The years since is that January month, between like mid-January to the first week of February, free agency is popping. It's like, so-and-so has agreed to terms here, da-da-da-da-da-da. And by mid-February is pretty much like,
locked,
has settled. And
we covered it.
So brutal. You have to understand what WNBA free agency normally looks like versus the absolute chaos we're staring at right now. Historically, free agency in this league has been a 2-week sprint in mid-January. Quick decisions, fast signings, done and dusted. Teams knew the salary cap, players knew their market value, and everyone moved with urgency because the season was approaching. It was organized. It was predictable. It worked. But this year, over 100 free agents are sitting in complete limbo. They can't negotiate with teams. They can't visit facilities.
And there's a lot more money on the table too.
Right,
You're not going to sign a deal quicker if you know, oh, maybe if I go to this team, I could get 800K.
Right.
This team's offering me 500K, maybe a chip.
Right.
That's why I'm saying, like, guys, why are we not ringing the alarms?
No.
They can't sign contracts. And here's what makes that number so staggering. In previous years, maybe 15 or 20 players hit free agency at once. That was manageable. This is an unprecedented volume of talent stuck in neutral, while the league and the Players Association argue over revenue, sharing percentages behind closed doors. It's not just a backlog. It's a crisis. And the traditional model that everyone relied on, it's completely collapsed. Kelsey Plum said it out loud during the first week of Unrivaled, and her honesty was almost shocking.
It's not looking good.
People for sure are, and I think that's why there was frustration or questions as to why the league showed up without a proposal. But we got to understand, like, and the last thing I'll say about free agency is people.
She's out there playing 3-on-3 basketball in Miami, competing in a completely different league, while her WNBA future hangs in the balance. And she flat out admitted that their free agency experience is going to be impacted. Think about what that means for a second. How are players supposed to visit multiple teams, sit down for face-to-face meetings with coaches and general managers, and carefully evaluate different contract offers, when they're either overseas playing in international leagues or committed to other competitions like Unrivaled. The old system depended on everyone being available at the same time for that concentrated January sprint. You could schedule meetings.
And obviously, we've seen their statements and their explanation as to why. And that was like, you know, this meeting, the intention of this meeting was to have a conversation and get on the same page. But what people need to understand about negotiations is there's strategy for both sides behind why they do the things they do. And so one could assess the lead.
Fly players in, wine and dine them, make your pitch and close the deal. But that entire framework has crumbled because nobody knows when free agency will even start, let alone how long it'll last or what the financial parameters will be. Players are scattered across the globe. Teams are frozen, and the calendar keeps moving forward like a runaway train. But this isn't just about scheduling logistics and travel headaches. The money on the table has fundamentally changed the entire equation, and that's where things get really complicated. Go back to 2021 for a second. When Elena Del Don signed with the Chicago
League, doing this and showing up without a proposal is another step in their negotiation strategy of putting pressure on the players to sign something knowing the season is coming up and they're going to be impacted if it's delayed. And so there's strategy behind all of this.
Guy that was considered one of the biggest free agency moves in WNBA history. One star player, one massive contract. It made headlines for weeks. Now, fast forward to today, and we're looking at a market where teams can offer $800,000 to marquee players and maybe $500,000 to solid starters. Those aren't decisions you rush through in 48 hours while you're catching a flight to Europe. If Team A offers you $500,000, you're going to wait and see if Team B comes in at $800,000. You have to. And it's not just about the money either. It's about choosing between
ready to strike. But then we've also heard a different tune from other players saying about the same, similar, like we're on the same page, but we want to play. It's been like more of a positive kind of spin. Have you heard of any, and we've
contender offering a lower salary versus a rebuilding team willing to pay premium money because they're desperate for talent? That requires meetings. That requires evaluation. That requires serious negotiation. And none of that can happen in a 2-week window when nobody even knows what the salary cap will actually be set at. The infrastructure isn't there. The timeline doesn't work. And everyone knows it. So what did the league do when they sat down for their latest negotiation session? They showed up without a formal proposal.
Grapevine that there's a couple players that are like, we need to sign this deal. Like they're worried about. Have you heard that?
Yeah. So again, I think I try to like take a more I try to gather all the thoughts and bring context to it, right? Yeah. And so I think it's clear based on the outward communication that there are
A revised offer, not a counter to the Players Association's demands. They showed up to have a conversation and get on the same page. And on the surface, that sounds perfectly reasonable, right? Dialogue is good. Communication matters. Open discussion leads to understanding. Except that's not what this was. This was a calculated negotiation tactic designed to apply maximum pressure on the players. And anyone who understands labor disputes can see it from a mile away. Think about the leverage dynamic here. The season is
varying opinions across the board. There are varying communication styles and varying beliefs as to what needs to be done and their desire to play the season. I think all players, what hasn't wavered, at least in the conversations I've had, is every player wants to play a season. Every player wants the season to start on time. That has not been a question or been differed.
Supposed to start in May. Training camps need to happen in April. Free agency has to be wrapped up by March at the absolute latest to give teams enough time to integrate new players, install offensive and defensive systems, and build chemistry. If these negotiations drag into late February, the players face an impossible choice. They can either accept whatever deal the league finally puts on the table, or they can watch the season get delayed and start losing game checks immediately. The league knows this. The players know the league knows this. And by showing up to a critical meeting without any formal proposal while the calendar keeps ticking forward, the league is
a difference happen, right? Because
Like what? Like, for example, what do you mean different stages?
like, okay, like look at Natasha Cloud, for example. Like, this is a player who's a veteran, has more years behind her than ahead of her, and her emphasis and also her communication style has, you know, through her career has always been very fiery.
essentially saying, the clock is your problem, not ours. It's psychological warfare dressed up as collaborative dialogue. And caught right in the middle of all this strategic posturing are some of the biggest names in the league. Nneka Ogwumike, Brianna Stewart, Eric Ogunbowl, Sada Sabali, Courtney Vandersloot. Every single one of them is an unrestricted free agent, and every single one of them is just waiting. They can't plan. They can't commit. They can't even...
has very strong opinions, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think when you consider the future of the league, there's a desire to, again, they haven't been shy about this, seek a transformational deal that that changes everything right now. And I think, again, this
begin the process of evaluating their options. And the prediction from multiple league sources is that we're about to see a massive wave of one-year deals, just like last season. But here's what's critical to understand. Players aren't signing short-term contracts because they want flexibility or because they're testing the market. They're signing one-year deals because they have no other choice. The logic is brutally simple. Sign for 1 year, get through the 2025 season, and hope that the collective bargaining agreement gets resolved.
This is now just my opinion. When you consider being in a younger place in your career, you naturally, again, this is totally my opinion, and I'm thinking exactly about a period early in my journalistic career. Your thought is, oh, well, I have time to get more done down the road. You know, maybe in this moment, you're
over the next 12 months so you can negotiate a proper long-term deal in 2026 when there's actual clarity about salary structures, revenue sharing, and what the financial future of the league actually looks like. It's not a strategy. It's survival.
on. Does that mean that there's not, like, having those conversations, in my opinion, does not equate to necessarily like...
And here's where the internal cracks in the Players Association start to show, and they're not small cracks anymore. The Players Association isn't some unified monolith moving in perfect lockstep. There are fractures forming, and they're starting to become visible to anyone paying attention. Take Natasha Cloud, for example. She's 32 years old with maybe 3 or 4 prime years left in her career. And she's been absolutely vocal, fiery, and uncompromising in her public statements about not settling for incremental improvements. She wants what she calls a transformational deal, and her position makes complete sense when you understand her timeline. This collective bargaining agreement negotiation is her last real chance to fundamentally change the economic structure of the league before she retires. If she compromises now, if she accepts a smaller deal just to get the season started on time, that's money she will never get back. Those opportunities don't come around twice. For her, this is everything. But then you've got younger players on the other end of the spectrum. Rookies and second-year pros who are looking at the situation completely differently because they have 10 or 12 years ahead of them in the league. Their thought process becomes, maybe we take a smaller one right now, get the season started on time, build goodwill with the league, and fight for more in the next CBA negotiation when we have more leverage and more experience. That's not surrender. That's long-term strategic thinking. But it's also a fundamentally different approach than what the veterans are pushing for, and that divergence in priorities creates tension. And that tension shows up in the contradictory public messages coming from players. Some are saying, we're ready to strike, we're standing firm, we will not be moved. Others are saying, we want to play, we're unified, but we also desperately want to get on the court. And those sound like completely opposite messages, but here's the truth. Both statements are actually accurate at the same time. Every player wants to play. Every player wants the season to start on time. Nobody is hoping for a lockout or dreaming about picket lines. But the real question, the one that exposes all the fractures, is this. What are you willing to sacrifice to make that happen? Natasha Cloud's communication style is direct, confrontational, and unapologetic. She's been that way her entire career. When she talks about this negotiation, she frames it in terms of generational change and refusing to back down. And that message resonates deeply with a certain segment of players who feel like the league has been underpaying them for decades, and this is finally the moment to demand everything. But there are other players who communicate very differently. They emphasize unity and collective goals, while also acknowledging the hard practical reality that missing games means missing paychecks. And for some players, those paychecks are everything. Neither approach is wrong. They're just different strategies aimed at the same objective. But the question that keeps everyone up at night is whether those different communication styles and different career timelines create enough internal tension that the Players Association starts to lose leverage. Because if the league senses that younger players are getting nervous about a delayed season, if there's any indication that the union might crack under pressure, then the league has absolutely zero incentive to make concessions. They can just wait, let the calendar keep moving, let the anxiety build, and eventually someone blinks. So here's where we are right now in early 2025, and it's not pretty. The league's strategy is crystal clear. Apply relentless time pressure, force the players to make a decision under extreme duress, and hope that the fear of losing game checks pushes them toward accepting a less favorable deal. The Players Association strategy is equally clear. Stay unified, don't panic, and force the league to put a real offer on the table by demonstrating they're genuinely willing to sacrifice the start of the season if that's what it takes. And caught directly in the middle of this high-stakes game of chicken are 100 free agents who have no idea where they'll be playing, how much money they'll be making, or when they'll actually sign a contract. Kelsey Plum is in Miami playing 3-on-3. Brianna Stewart is presumably somewhere training and waiting. Nneka Ogwumike, one of the most accomplished players in the entire history of the league, can't even begin to evaluate her options because there are literally no options yet. The salary cap doesn't exist. The maximum contract value hasn't been determined. The revenue sharing formula is still being argued over in conference rooms. And this is what happens when a league experiences explosive growth without having the infrastructure in place to handle it. The WNBA just came off a record-breaking season. Caitlin Clark's rookie year drove unprecedented television ratings, sold-out arenas, and mainstream media coverage that the league had been chasing for decades. Expansion franchises are being added. Media rights deals are being renegotiated. The entire economic model of the league is being rebuilt in real time. And right in the middle of that massive transformation, the collective bargaining agreement expired. The timing couldn't possibly be worse. Or, depending on your perspective, the timing couldn't possibly be better. If you're a player, this is your moment of maximum leverage. The league is growing, money is flowing in, and you have the power to demand a significantly bigger share of the revenue pie. If you're the league, you're looking at uncertain future revenue streams, massive expansion costs, and the very real risk of overcommitting financially before you actually know what the new media deals will pay out. It's a classic standoff, and neither side can afford to blink first. So what actually happens next? The realistic scenarios are extremely limited. Either the league makes a serious, comprehensive proposal in the next 2 weeks and free agency happens in a brutally compressed late February window, or the season gets delayed and we're looking at a June start date instead of May. And a delayed season means fewer games, which means less revenue for absolutely everyone. It means disrupting the Olympics preparation schedule for players on national teams. It means potentially conflicting with unrivaled future seasons if that league continues to expand. It means total chaos. But here's the thing about negotiations that people forget. Chaos creates pressure, and pressure forces decisions. The league is betting that players won't actually sacrifice game checks when push comes to shove. The players are betting that the league won't actually delay the season and forfeit massive broadcast revenue. Somebody's bet is wrong, and we're about to find out exactly who miscalculated. And if we do see that predicted wave of one-year deals, If dozens of players sign short-term contracts just to survive 2025, that creates an absolutely massive free agency class in 2026, which means we could be right back in this exact nightmare scenario 12 months from now, except with even more players available and even more uncertainty hanging over everything. The league needs long-term stability. Players need long-term financial security. One-year deals provide neither. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: should the players hold firm and risk delaying the season to secure a truly transformational deal that changes the economic landscape forever, or should they accept incremental progress, get on the court, and live to fight another day in the next negotiation cycle? Because there's no middle ground here. Either you believe this is the moment to demand everything, or you believe patience and gradual improvement is the smarter long-term play. You can't have both, and whichever path they choose will define the future of the WNBA for the next decade.